Welcome to the Accelerated Hypnotherapy Podcast. This is part one of an interview with my client, Leanne. Today we have a special guest. Hi, Leanne.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me and my listeners today to share your story. Would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Leanne. I live in the southeastern United States, and my story is one of partner betrayal trauma. Going way back, I first laid eyes on my husband 30 years ago this month, actually. Mutual friends of ours dated, and so that's how I knew who he was. And I immediately had a crush on him. And me being 16 and him being 7 years older than me, he was not interested at all. And he was like, "Go away, little girl." Brokenhearted. It obviously didn't work out. And I spent a few years trying to be in the right place at the right time to make a connection, even after I was of age, 18, 19, 20. And it just didn't happen. But I always felt like I was supposed to know him. Like the first time I laid eyes on him, my heart like skipped a beat. And anytime I ever heard anybody say his name, my heart would skip a beat. And I just felt like I'm supposed to know him. And it didn't work out. And I eventually got married and had a child. And that marriage did not work out. And I was probably 27 years old when I divorced my first husband, moved back in with my parents with a 3-year-old toddler. Happened to run into that mutual friend of ours and just called up. And he told me, he said, "Do you know who I always thought you would make a good couple with?" I was like, "Who?" And he said the name, which made my heart skip a beat. And I said, "Me too." and he said, "I'm going to give you his contact information. I think he would like it if you just checked in and said hi." I was like, "Okay." And I did that. And it was just magical from the beginning. It was just a fairy tale. I had a lot of issues from my first marriage. There was some, and I was very hesitant to get involved with anybody. And but he literally was so patient, and he put my heart back together, and he put the heart of my 3-year-old son together. His dad is very much in his life. When you go from living with your dad 24/7 and then seeing him every other weekend, it affects a kid. And so my son was very sad and missed his dad a lot. So when my husband to be came into our lives, he just showed me how I deserve to be treated. It was just wonderful from the beginning. We were married a year and a half later, and it was honestly a near perfect marriage. We had our disagreements like anybody does, but it was so easy to be together. It was so incredibly easy to be together. And I never lost that spark. I was always excited about him. He was always excited about me. There was no indication on the horizon that betrayal could be in my future. He started going through a little something where you could tell that it started to hit him that he was getting older. He was in his early 50s, and he just hits you like, wow, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm getting older. And I think he was going through a little something. And I did my best to help him through that and encourage him and compliment him and just let him know that I love him. It doesn't we're going to get old together. It's going to happen. but yeah,
So tell me what happened then.
it was like everything was as it normally is. He's usually a very affectionate person. When we first got together, I was so not used to affection and hand holding and pet names, baby, honey, sweetie. And so that was so foreign to me in the beginning, but he broke down my walls and it became very normal. Anytime I was in the vicinity, anytime I was close enough for him to reach out and grab me, he would grab me and hug me and just compliment me. And just, it wasn't a secret that we were crazy about each other. And it was just like one day he was texting me that I was his perfect, precious wife. And I did so much for him. And he was so thankful to have me. 2 days later, just starting to pull away from me. And I didn't notice it so much at first because we're both busy working, and the text in the morning, did you make it to work okay, stopped. The compliments, the little touches every time I got in his area, just the affection just stopped. And I knew something was up, but I didn't, it never entered my mind at that time that I didn't understand. And so I just tried to talk to him, and he was just like, I'm just going through something. And I thought it was like some like little coming of age crisis kind of thing. Like he's just dealing with things. And so I just tried to be supportive and just, but little by little, the attention and the affection started to erode and started to drift away. And I just didn't understand what I had done because less than a week ago, I was perfect and precious. And now he was starting to be indifferent and cold to me. And I just didn't understand. And I just felt like I was losing him. And I would cry and beg him and be like, what's going on with you? We've always been so close. I thought, why do I feel so far away from you? And he would just brush me off. If I started to cry, he just acted like I was annoying him, and it just was not him. It's just not. I've never saw this side of him ever. And so for about a month, I was just miserable, just not understanding what was happening. And then he started, like, I would walk into the room and he would get up and walk out, like he didn't want to be around me. And I almost felt like he wasn't my husband anymore. I felt like I almost didn't have a right to walk up and hug him. Like I just felt like he was a different person. And so it just started. I finally got a clue after a month. Something is up. I've got to turn into the FBI and figure it out. And there was one night when we were getting ready to go to bed. I just asked him point blank, "Are you talking to someone?" And he said, and he of course he told me no. He said, "No, I'm just going through something." And I just started to cry. And for the first time in a month, he showed me some compassion. And he was like, because he was already like sitting on the bed, getting ready to go to bed, go to sleep. And he's come here and he patted beside him. And I sat down. And for 30, 45 minutes, like my husband was back. He was hugging me and kissing me and holding me and reassuring me that everything was okay and that I had nothing to worry about. And he was just going through something, and I was being so supportive and so wonderful, and it felt like everything was right in the world. Okay, everything's okay, everything's okay. And so I thought everything was fine, and we went to sleep. And the next morning, when I was seeing him out the door for work, because I was working from home at the time, I go to hug him and kiss him as he's leaving, and he takes a step back. And I'm like, okay, last night everything was fine. What's going on? Like, why is he back to being this cold, distant, indifferent person who acts like he can't stand to be around me? And so that's when that night, I turned it to the FBI. And I knew that he had a laptop, and a laptop that he didn't really use anymore, that was connected to his Facebook. And I'm sorry, and some people might see it as an invasion of privacy, but you've been with me for 17 years. If you're acting like this, I have a right to figure out why. We have an agreement here. We have an agreement. We took vows, and and under law, we're looked at as one entity. Therefore, you're I'm going to find out what's up because I've given you a chance to tell me. I have been supportive. I have asked you point blank. So I got to figure it out. And I logged on to that old laptop that was so slow. It was so slow. I was like trying to power it up and it took forever. And I'm sitting there, my heart is like pounding in my ears. It's like I can feel the adrenaline already. And I click on Facebook Messenger and then I see it. I see it. Messages between him and a friend of his sister. And I'll never forget these secret admissions of the heart between two people. I just, at that moment, it's like I no longer recognize my life at that moment. It's like everything I had, everything that we had built and promised each other. And it's like my world just imploded. And I wish I had been patient and waited for the entire thing to download and read the entire thing because that became a point of contention later because he deleted it before I had a chance to read everything. But after I saw like several things that just shattered my heart, I saw red. And by the way, this was 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, and he was asleep in bed. And I know this isn't, might be frowned upon, but I woke him up with a punch in the nose. And he says he deserved it. I just, yeah, and I was just, I don't even remember everything I said. I know I used very colorful words. I know I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And he tells me at that moment, he was like, what have I done? What have I done? How can, this genie can't be put back in the bottle, was his words. What have I done to the love of my life? And so I like yelled at him, said my piece, then stormed out of the room and stormed upstairs with his laptop to the upstairs bathroom and locked myself in the bathroom and started trying to go back and read. It was still downloading that stupid old laptop. And he was outside the door trying to talk me down. And I just remember I just being on the bathroom floor, just wailing my heart out. It was sounds were coming out of me that I remember thinking, is that coming from me? And I was just inconsolable. And my son, who was 20 years old, I think by now at the time, had told me that he could hear and he could feel my pain because he was woken up out of a dead sleep. What is going on? And it's like my world just blew up. But then you're faced with this information, but then you're all like, okay, why, how, what, where, who? You're like trying to fill in all these blanks now, and you're just I know now that ordeal that traumatized me. It overwhelmed my nervous system, and I know so much now about trauma and how the nervous system works. That when you're betrayed by your number one support person, your partner, it feels like a threat to your safety, a threat to your life, and you become traumatized. And that trauma is like inside your body. It is trapped inside your body. And so it's a blur. Like I know I called into work that day and so did he. And he's immediately sorry and immediately broke it off, stopped it. And so then I'm calling his sister demanding information because it was a friend of hers. And I'm starting to try to fill in the blanks and put the pieces together now. So now I'm like in detective mode, hypervigilance mode, trying to put everything together. Because here I thought my life was this, and then I find out my husband was secretly doing this over here. Now I've got to find out what to fill in the blanks, because you can't move on unless I knew from the very beginning, like I needed to know exactly what happened and how it happened and why it happened, and that was vital for me to be able to move on and work it out.
Thank you so much for sharing. How did that leave you? And then, like, how did it affect you? What happened to your life, and how long did that go on for before you decided to get help? So let's talk about what happened after you found out what happened to you. How did it affect you, different parts of your life?
I was a mess. I was just distraught. I was just felt so, and then when you finally know, it's like pieces start falling into place and clicking, and you start putting things together that happened over the last however long, last month for me. And then you just have this overwhelming question of why, how. And so I had never heard of betrayal trauma before then. I'd never heard of it. I always assumed, but basically what my husband did was it was strictly an emotional affair. It was, and sometimes, and statistics show that emotional affairs are harder for especially women to get over than like just a drunken one night stand, that, because it's like an emotional affair that takes time to build. You built that with somebody. That happened over time. You made intentional decisions every day to grow closer to this person, to connect to this person and disconnect from me. So you had plenty of moments to course correct, to realize what was at stake, to choose me, and you did not do that. And so to me, an emotional is just, I'm sure any kind of affair is hard to get over, but I always assumed it was a terrible thing to go through, but I had no idea. I had no idea. And I just felt like I was floating through life on autopilot there for a little while. I just felt when you find out that something like that's happened, it just calls your past, present, and future into question, because you think that, okay, the husband I had is not the husband I thought I had. The marriage I had is not the marriage I thought I had. So you start like questioning your past, and your presence definitely in question, and your future for sure is in question. So you're just in limbo, just not knowing what to do, trying to find out exactly what went on. Because for me, I needed to know what happened too, because you're trying to fill in that part of your story of your life. I needed to know, what do I need to grieve over? What do I need to forgive you for? And he immediately goes into damage control. And I'm sure you've heard of trickle truth, where you get a little at a time of what happened. Usually they only will admit to what you've busted them on. And he was fearful. He was, number one, he said he didn't want to hurt me, tell me anything that would hurt me further. He was afraid I was going to leave him. He was fearful. But he was also trying to cover his back end too. But I was having I, my emotions were all over the place. I was just, one moment I would be just deeply sad, just so sad and crying nonstop. And then the next moment I would be enraged and yelling and screaming and just berating him, and how could you do this? You're disloyal, lack of integrity. fickle, it's just all these, throwing all these insults at him. I asked myself, I was like, what is my deal? I feel like a crazy person. I feel like I'm coming unhinged. What is wrong with me? And so I, good old Google, get online and just try to figure out what your deal is. And so that's when I first became familiar with the term of betrayal trauma. And everyone, family, friends, noticed an instant change in me. People that were my coworkers, they were like pulling me aside. They're like, "Are you okay? You're just not yourself." And we just have to. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm okay. Because you don't want to spread your business all over town. That's when I started getting familiar with exactly what had happened to me, what had been done to me. Started doing a lot of research, watching videos, reading articles about betrayal trauma and what it does to someone. And that my reaction was very much normal, was because I was, and it's called post-traumatic infidelity disorder. It's not an official term, I think, like in the medical dictionary or whatever, but it is a term that therapists use. They use that term. They agree that it is a thing, post-traumatic infidelity disorder. And that's something that I definitely had. It affected everything. But then my husband, he was like, of course, they try to downplay it, what occurred. And because in the beginning, right after it happened, I was like, okay, we've been together for 17 years. I want to work this out with you. You're the love of my life. Up until a month ago, my life with you was perfect. So I don't want to be hasty and let a month of stupid decisions end this love story. But then I started, it was all, oh, it was just flirting. It was just got carried away. It was just like online pretend. And I felt I was flattered that someone found me interesting. It was because he was kind of being hard on himself for getting older. And so I guess this validation from an absolute stranger meant more than validation from his wife. And it, then I started uncovering things that told me that it was a lot more emotional involved than he tried to present. And so I would uncover, the first thing I uncovered was I had recently had fraudulent charges on our shared bank account. And I was trying to sort through that. And I saw a charge on there. I thought was weird. And I thought, oh man, somebody got my debit card information again. And so I start to dig into that and find out it was a gift that was going to be for her. And you didn't plan to see her, but how are you going to give her a gift? How far was this going to go? How far were you going to take this? And so then that immediately kicked the trauma back, kicked it into overdrive. And then I'm really looking and digging, and I don't believe anything you say. Because yeah, that night that I woke him up with an uppercut, he deleted the entire Facebook conversation before I had a chance to read it all to find out exactly what went on. So then that's the worst thing he ever could have done, because then your mind fills in, your imagination fills in the blanks, and it's a lot worse than probably what really happened. So he deletes that conversation, and I uncovered this gift, and I'm like, okay, it was more serious than you led me to believe. So I immediately don't believe anything you say. You're a liar, and I need to uncover the truth. And so that just started I'm like, tell me everything. I need to know everything. And he would only tell me what I uncovered, really. And I immediately, was like, I think I'm going to need help with this. I don't think I can overcome this on my own. And hypnotherapy was something that popped in my head, like from the very beginning. I was like, gosh, man, because I didn't realize clinical hypnotherapy was a thing. The only hypnotherapy I was privy to was the guy at the comedy club that hypnotizes somebody in the audience and makes them cluck like a chicken. That's the only time I had ever experienced someone under hypnosis. I didn't realize that clinical hypnotherapy was a thing, but it did cross my mind that I think that's the only thing that's going to help me here. Like, it's just a thought that came to me.
This is the end of part 1. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think of Leanne's story. Would you have done the same thing if you have found out that your partner was cheating? Leave a comment below and let me know. Subscribe and like this video for more content on betrayal trauma. And let's connect in part 2.